Hi everyone, I'm a little sick today, but I wanted to share a video of a project I've been working on the last week or so where I'm turning an old table into a treasure. I had it in mind that I wanted to lighten up the wood on this table, and that meant that first I had to take all that old orange finish off. So to do that, I grabbed my orbital sander and got to work first with a coarser sandpaper, getting it smoother as I went. When you're using an orbital sander, you really don't need to push down on it very hard. You just want it to do the work for you. It just moves in very tiny circles, and it's just going to take the finish off very gently. It's pretty much no work at all. It was pretty tricky getting the finish off of those really detailed legs. I have an old Black & Decker mouse sander that has what they call a finger attachment that just puts in a little bit more of a detailed sanding. You can see it really gets in there into those grooves. That came in really handy for this project. When all the sanding's done, you need to get rid of any sawdust that might still be on your wood. So I use a tack cloth just to wipe down my entire piece and make sure that it was totally clean. Now, for some reason, I didn't put gloves on before I picked up this tack cloth. I don't know what I was thinking, but it leaves a pretty sticky residue on your fingers that took a couple minutes to get off. So don't do what I did here. Put on a pair of gloves first. It will make your life a lot easier later. Now, the whole time I was thinking about doing this project, I had planned on lightening up the wood by using this Varathane sun bleach stain. And on the can, it looks like it's an exact match for a shelving system that we have in our living room. And I thought this table would work in there really nicely. But when I started brushing it on the table, I realized that it's really gray, like really gray. It's much grayer than it looks like on the can. And I think the combination of this stain and the fact that this wood still had sort of an orangish tint to it, even after I stripped it, it just wasn't working for me at all. So I put a stain on, I would wipe it off, and it got even more orange than it looked in the beginning. So I had to figure out a plan B. So here's what the top looked like after half a coat of the stain, and it just wasn't good. So my next plan is where my faux pickling idea came to be. Now, pickling is a process of using watered down paint, white paint, on wood to give it more of a weathered, aged look. So what I did was I grabbed some chalk paint and I watered that down and I brushed it on and I let it set for a second, and then I'd start wiping it off a little bit. Now, because the stain is an oil stain and the chalk paint is water-based, they do kind of clash a little bit. But after a few more layers of each, I went back and forth, and I found a really happy medium where I had lightened the wood, but it wasn't gray and it wasn't white, and I could still see some of the wood grain coming through after I dry brushed a little bit, and it ended up pretty cool. I did the same process on the legs and the underside of the table. You can see it's doing the same thing there. It's sort of beating up a little bit because of the water versus oil situation, but I realized as I went, if I just let the chalk paint mixture sit for a little bit longer than I was, it would dry enough that when I wiped it, it wouldn't totally disappear. Honestly, one of the hardest parts of this tiny little table was making sure that the ending finish looked the same from every angle, because there was so many sides to these little spindles and the legs, and so many steps between the paint and the stain. But when it finally worked out, it finally worked out. The last step for the little table was to seal it. I ended up using a wax that I used for chalk paint projects. It's a Ceramicoat wax. I could have used like a polyurethane or something like that, but at some points that does tend to yellow a little bit. So even though the wax doesn't last forever, it was just what I wanted to use for this project in the setting we'd be using the table. So after I buffed the wax a few times, it was ready to be put back in my living room. I'm still working on setting it up and seeing how much I like the things on top and underneath, but it's a work in progress, and that's okay. It's definitely much better than the orangey color, and it's definitely much better than buying something new. So as you can see from all the steps, this was pretty much a labor of love, this little tiny table. But like I said, I didn't want to buy something. I didn't want to see this table end up in a landfill or anything like that. I really wanted to use what I had and make it work for our new space. Let me know what you think down below, if you've ever tried a project like this, if you've ever done any faux pickling and what you used. I could use some more tips for next time, because again, a little bit of trial and error on this one. But in the meantime, you want to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm going to be doing a lot more trash to treasure type videos coming up. And I'm also going to be doing some shop with me's. I have to make a trip to my local Habitat for Humanity restore very, very soon. And there's also some new thrift stores in the area that I want to check out as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.